This is one of my favorite books called Extra Yarn. It's written by Mac Barnett and illustrated by John Klassen. This book was given to me before Lennon was born, and so all of my teacher friends from Uni Hill wrote notes in it for me, which is so nice. Extra Yarn by Mac Barnett, illustrated by John Klassen. Let's see here. Oof. Here we go. On a cold afternoon, in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys, Annabelle found a box filled with yarn of every color. So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars, too. But there was still extra yarn. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You two look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate.
Okay, I'll sit right there.
But it turned out he was. And even after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. And look, it's wrapped between the trees. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet, Mr. Norman," shouted Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone! Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," Annabelle said, "so they don't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." But it turned out she could. And she did. Even for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. Here she is. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton, and Mrs. Pendleton, and for Dr. Palmer, and for little Louie. She made sweaters for everyone, except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and who would stand in his shorts with the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat. And even then, Annabelle, that's okay, still had extra yarn. So she made sweaters for all the dogs and all the cats and for other animals too. Soon, people thought, soon Annabelle will run out of yarn. But it turned out she didn't. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters.
Bears don't wear sweaters.
No, neither do mailboxes. Does look prettier though. Remember how the town looked at the beginning? Look at that. Things began to change in that little town. I remember at the beginning, it looked like this. Very dark and gray and brown. And things are beginning to change.
That's the doghouse.
Where's the doghouse? Right there, you think? No, I think this is part of the roof. See how this part's white? I think the roof is covered with white. Remember at the beginning it said, these are the words, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys. So I think that's part of the window. Let's see here. News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand.
And that's the bad guy.
Shh. Yeah, I know, but keep it to yourself, okay, if you've already heard this book. One day, an archduke who was very fond of clothes sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. "Little girl," said the archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1,000,000. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The archduke's mustache twitched. $2,000,000, he said. Annabelle shook her head. "No, thanks." $10,000,000, shouted the archduke. "Take it or leave it." "Leave it," said Annabelle. "I won't sell the yarn." And she didn't. Oh. He does sound like a bad guy. He's not speaking very nicely to her. I wonder what's going to happen next. Don't say it, Lennon, okay? So, that night, the archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house, and they stole the box and took it to the archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the sea back to his castle. The archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair. Then he took out the box and he lifted its lid and he looked inside. Don't say anything. Don't give it away, okay? Look. It's empty. His mustache quivered. It shivered. It trembled. The archduke hurled the box out the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." But here she is with Mars. It turned out she was. The end. So as you think about this book, think about who are the important characters in this book. Who's the main character? Who is this story mostly about? What do you think, Lennon? What's her name? Do you remember her name?
No.
Her name's Annabelle.
Annabelle.
Do you think Mars is a main character or a secondary character? Is the story mostly about him?
No.
No, but he's in it. What about all the people in the neighborhood? And her classmates? Are those main characters?
Yes.
Is the story mostly about them?
No.
No, then it's not. They're not main characters. Sit on down. What about this guy, the Archduke? Is he a main character?
No.
Would we have a very good story without him? Would there be a problem in the story without the Archduke?
No.
Right? He's actually an important character in the book. Where Annabelle is the main character and the protagonist, she's the good guy, he is the bad guy, the antagonist. So he is an important character, but we don't like him very much. Now, let's think of this story and think of where it happens.
At a little wood.
A little world, this little town. It takes place in this little town. And what can we say about this little town? Kind of dark, dreary. It's winter probably because it's cold, right? And then I want you to think about what happens in this story. And I'm going to go through the pages. And I want you to use your words to say what happens. Not you, Lennon, because we want to give other kids a chance. So in the beginning, what happens? You can say that. In the beginning. Then what?
Let's see, let's sweaters.
Yeah. And who else did she knit sweaters for? Remember, there was Nate. Do you remember anybody else?
8.
Nate.
8.
We're not rhyming right now. Oh, and his dog. That's right. Huh? Oh, I remember her classmates. She knit for them. And then who did she knit for?
A bunch of people.
A bunch of people she did. And then, oh, here's Mr. Crabtree. What happens next? When there were no more people to knit for, then she knit sweaters for animals and things that didn't even wear sweaters, right? Then what happened? Don't say it out loud, Lennon. This is a problem part of the story. Yeah, don't put your feet under there, please. Take your feet out. Thank you. And then what? What did he tell her he would get?
The yarn.
He really wanted the yarn. And then but when he got back,
The yarn was gone.
now why do you think the yarn wasn't there when he opened the box? Annabelle didn't know that he was going to take it, so she didn't hide the yarn. Wonder. The book doesn't tell us. You have to think about it. And finally, in the end, what happens? And she was happy again. Well, I hope you enjoyed my book, Extra Yarn. Well, I'll be reading some more books for you. So I hope you enjoyed this and that you come back and read with me again. Have a good day. Bye.